An Arabian Union. Seems simple enough, huh? Europe managed to do it, and they look just fine. Soviet and Chinese propagandizing fueled racial tensions within the African community. During this period, there was an intentional plot to infiltrate, deceive, and manipulate the American population through grasp over popular culture, the money system, the war industry, educational system, the media, and even the government. The Jews would go on to become leading or even founding members of the Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, from Leon Trotsky and Maxim Litvinov to Lev Kamenev and even Lenin himself. You might wonder why Strasserism maintained its anti-Semitism as part of its doctrine, and simply put, it was because the Jewish population within Germany was massively overrepresented in the highest echelons of German society. Bankers, businessmen, and legal officials were overwhelmingly Jewish. A group which was but a small minority within the nation dominated the majority of the upper class. To Strasser, the Jews were to the German people what Tsar Nicholas was to the Russian people, an oppressive and wealthy figure who was profiting off of their misery. Maybe we should just erase a few borders right about here. However, would only be granted independence if Rhodesia established majority rule. Now I know what you may be thinking. What's wrong with that? Seems fair. But such an occurrence would leave the white population in Rhodesia without any representation, something which had already been proven disastrous in the Belgian Congo, where the Belgian government was made essentially powerless, and Congolese rebels brutally butchered victims specifically targeted for being white. Politics have become increasingly polarized, freedoms and liberties have been sacrificed on the altar of safety. We seem to have become so numb, so paranoid and so afraid. The US survived a death by 1,000 cuts, but now lives with every last scar, leaving the once beautiful nation a mangled version of its former self. The scars made by the distrust for the government instilled by its responses to Waco and Ruby Ridge, the sense of vulnerability brought about by the Oklahoma City bombing, Columbine, and World Trade Center attack, the loss of faith in American strength during the Battle of Mogadishu. All the while, the American public medicated itself with newly popularized antidepressants and reality television. The war on drugs to combat the effects of the counterculture movement, as well as the new flow of illegal drugs coming in from the southern border in the wake of the 1965 Hart-Celler Immigration Act, which opened America's immigration doors to second and third world countries. American streets would see crime escalate to new heights, and in turn police would become more militarized, which in turn fueled more fear, which fueled more crime. We, through a series of race-based revolutions, bring the African continent under communistic sway, something which in our timeline, was somewhat successful but not really, because they just destabilized the entire area. Organization expelled from National Socialist Germany, known as the Frankfurt School. Having been expelled from Germany, it relocated itself to New York City. The Frankfurt School is plainly a school of social theory and philosophy, one which drew inspirations from the teachings of Hegel, Freud, Kant, and most prominently, Karl Marx, essentially granting him absolute power over the nation and sending the country into an economic spiral, while seizing land and authorizing the brutalization of the white minority, justifying it as part of the struggle against colonialism. I'm sure you'll tell me there's some obscure form of communism in some small country somewhere that would only work if we gave it a chance, but wherever it may be, communism, if its core principles are to be maintained, time and time again fails to create a united communist bloc. Be it during the Yugoslav-Soviet split, the Sino-Soviet split, the Kurio-Sino estrangement, it fails to progress beyond the point of authoritarian dictatorship, some devolving into a nationalistic oligarchy, a dwindling technocracy still holding on to some semblance of communism, or some grand mess of a war zone or balkanized states impoverished by poor economic policy.